وبست الجبال بسا فكانت هباء منبثا وكنتم أزواجا ثلاثا فأصحاب الميمنة ما أصحاب الميمنة فأصحاب المشأمة ما أصحاب المشأمة والسابقون السابقون أولئك المقربون في جنات النعيم ثلة من الأولين وقليل من الآخرين على سرر موضونة متكئين عليها متقابلين يطوف عليهم ولدان مخلدون بأكواب وأباريق وكأس من معين لا يصدعون عنها ولا ينزفون وفاكهة مما يتخيرون ولحم طير مما يشتهون وحور عين كأمثال اللؤلؤ المكنون جزاء بما كانوا يعملون لا يسمعون فيها لغوا ولا تأثيما إلا قيلا سلاما سلاما فأصحاب اليمين ما أصحاب اليمين في سدر مخضود وطلح ممدود وظل ممدود وماء مسكوب وفاكهة كثيرة لا مقطوعة ولا ممنوعة وفرش مرفوعة إنا أنشأناهن إنشاء فجعلناهن أبكارا عربا أترابا لأصحاب اليمين ثلة من الأولين وثلة من الآخرين وأصحاب الشمال ما أصحاب الشمال في سموم وحميم وظل من يحموم لا بارد ولا كريم إنهم كانوا قبل ذلك مترفين وكانوا يصرون على حنث عظيم وكانوا يقولون إذا متنا وكنا ترابا وعظاما أئنا لمبعوثون أو آباؤنا الأولون قل إن الأولين والآخرين لمجموعون إلى ميقات يوم معلوم ثم إنكم أيها الضالون المكذبون لآكلون من شجر من زقوم فمالئون منها البطون
الحمد لله رب العالمين الحمد لله والحمد حقه كما يستحقه حمدا كثيرا الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله اللهم لعن أول ظالم ظلم حق محمد وآل محمد وآخر تابع له على ذلك اللهم لعن العصابة التي جاهدت الحسين وشايعت وبايعت وتابعت على قتله اللهم لعنهم جميعا ثم الصلاة والسلام على خير خلق الله أجمعين محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين واللعنة الدائمة على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين. Just a small introduction into our discussion, that it is a given that there is a correlation between having mastery over oneself and controlling one's life. Able to have control of the way you live, you need to have control over yourself. In fact, self-control is a prerequisite for any achievement whatsoever. Even if you examine any achievement, a small achievement, a large achievement, from writing a small poem to writing a book to inventing something to discovering something through experimentation, whatever it is, even exploring uncharted lands and meeting, all this has some kind of self-control and mastery over the self. If you do not have this control over yourself, then these objectives cannot be achieved. And we have one of the things that they did in Stanford University, and over years a study that you probably see the Christians have adopted it on their educational videos as well, is the marshmallow experiment, which is where they get a child, they put the child in the room, and they put a marshmallow on a plate for the child. And they say to the child, if you wait, we will give you 2 marshmallows. But if you eat the marshmallow, that's the only marshmallow you will get. So then they leave the room, and then the child is seated in the room with what? With that single marshmallow. And you see them, they're looking at the marshmallow, they smell it, they get as close as they can, one starts nibbling the edges. They'll do everything. One of them, she ate it while the woman was leaving the room. She didn't even wait, said, see you later. You know, then when after a while, the teacher returns to the room and the ones with the single marshmallow are given the second marshmallow, you look at their faces light up because they've mastered themselves. They were able to hold themselves back. And thus, they were rewarded with that second marshmallow. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa alihi. Tonight's discussion surrounds al-hilm, or al-hulm, as we say. We say al-hilm, okay, al-hilm, sorry, or if someone's halim, someone that has hilm. What's hilm? I always say hilm, there's several, I'll give you the dictionary meanings, then we'll go with the narration. One dictionary meaning gives it the definition of what we call sabr or tasamuh, which they say is patience or forbearing or self-control or bearing something, or as I use for the subject tonight, clemency, to be clement. Another says it's tasahul, which is when you are lenient, shown leniency or you tolerate something. Another says it's tabassur or ta'aqqul, which means the ability to deal with a critical situation, wisdom or the quality of being prudent, okay, the ability to decide exactly what's right and what should be done, to have that insight, to have that discretion when you act. This is the dictionary definition of the word. But we look at one that is mentioned to the second Imam salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi, Imam al-Hasan ibn Ali al-Mujtaba. He is asked, what is al-hilm? And this is his response. He says, qadhmul ghayth wa milkun nafs. Basically, he says hilm or clemency is qadhmul ghayth, means repressing or suppressing one's anger, and milkun nafs is to control yourself, self-control, to have that control over yourself. This is hilm. So, this is the definition that the Imams give. But like everything else, we are not known until we are tested. You know, the problem at school, when we used to do experiments, you remember, whenever you're given, like, if you're doing physics, they give you the formula and then they'll say to you, for example, your final velocity equals your initial velocity plus acceleration times time. And then you say, hold on, how's that possible? They say, yeah, it's a frictionless surface, there's no other environmental hindrances, and that's how it works. That's not true, but there are a lot of factors that affect a situation. So we're all good and proper in everyday life. You walk through the street, everyone's smiling. No one has a problem. Until something changes. Someone puts in an input into the formula and then we'll see what the final result is. So here, Luqman al-Hakim says to his son about this. He says to him, ثلاثة لا يعرفون إلا في ثلاثة مواضع. There are three things that are not known unless they are placed in three situations or three scenarios. How would I know if they're present without the test? It's got to be tested. Everyone looks generous when you meet them. Everyone looks courteous when you meet them. You know, how do you think people get ripped off? Do you think someone walks up to them and says, listen, I'm going to take your money and I'm not going to finish the job, or I'm not going to do the job properly? And they say, yes, please, here's my checkbook. No. They walk in, okay, Habib, I'm going to show you how this is done. It's going to be a top job. And then he shows him past pictures of all the work he's done. And then he shows him all these testimonials and reviews that God knows how we got them written with so many fake accounts. So God knows how it's done. So it says three situations you'll know. The first one is our subject, but I just want to talk about the other two, what they are, so someone doesn't say, why didn't you finish the hadith? The other two, where he says, لا يعرف الشجاع إلا في الحرب. This is amazing. When I went to Lebanon after Harb Tammuz, after the July War. There was a guy in one of the villages who was a bully. He used to pick on everybody. He's a big boy, really big boy. You know those guys with big guns, and I don't mean big biceps, a big body. And he used to always put up, you know, those thuggish people that push people around. And everyone used to, about the Ansharul, the people didn't want to do anything with him. They said, when Israel first began to attack Lebanon, everyone was saying, this guy was on the ground and he was crying. He said, can someone please carry me? I can't feel my legs. He was shivering. These people used to hit were helping him. That's all right. Calm down. And then after that, he never opened his mouth after the war. When the war came down, and these people that he was slapping around were the people that fought. And he was one of those people that shook and fell because he was tough, hitting the minions at the beginning, not realizing these minions that he took as minions were the Shuja'an. These were the ones that Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam says what? They were the lions in the forest and they were the serpents in the valley. They're the ones that would fight. So the first situation to know if someone's courageous is war. وَلَا تَعْرِفُ أَخَاكَ إِلَّا عَنْدَ حَاجَتِكَ. You know how we have a lot of friends. How do you know how many friends do you have? How do you know who's your friend? At the time of need. When you need, you know your friend. When you are in need, your friend is there. Your friend. Your friend's not the guy that sits and has a hubbly bubbly with you. Your friend is not the guy that if you want to go out and commit something haram hangs out with you. Your friend is not the guy that when you want to rip something, he comes and rips it with you. Your friend is not the one that sits in class and mucks around with you. Your friend is when you are down. Your friend is when you are in need that they come and they show that they are your friend. What about the hilm? Clemency, how is it shown? Luqman al-Hakim alayhi salam says about al-hilm, لا يعرف الحليم إلا عند الغضب. The one that is forbearant, the one that has clemency is only known when they are angry. This is amazing. I've sat down, we're doing marriage counseling, and they get into an argument, and then you tell them, settle. I remember once I was sitting down, my father was talking to these people, calm down, calm down. He told him, Salli al Nabi, Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And the guy's response was, Fish Nabi. That was his response. There is no prophet. Why? Because there's a problem now. So the prophet goes flying out of the window. There's no God that will be next. This is what happens when they get angry. It overlook what the boundaries are. A person that is forbearant does not. See, like I said, everyone knows to be good in a normal environment situation. Now, before we continue, because I will talk a bit more about this anger part, let's take a look at what the clement person, firstly, a Halim, what's he like? Amir al-Mu'mineen, salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi, Ali ibn Abi Talib says, Al-Halimu man ihtamala ikhwanah. The Halim, this person that is the clement one or the forbearant one, is who? Who's the Halim? He's the one, man ihtamala ikhwana. He is the one who tolerates his brothers or his brethren. Tolerates others. Listen to the word. It doesn't say accepts them. It says it tolerates. You don't have to accept people, you just tolerate. You know, sometimes you're sitting down, there's someone that you are not happy with their presence in the crowd, but you just tolerate they're there. You know? They're just there in the group, so what? I'll just put up with it. That's what tolerating them is. To tolerate what takes place around them. In fact, being someone that has this helm, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam in a narration says, كَادَ الْحَلِيمُ أَنْ يَكُونَ نَبِيًّا. You know what this means? It means the Halim, the clement one, he says he's almost a prophet. This is what the Prophet's saying. The one that has clemency, that controls their anger, is almost a prophet. Allahu Akbar. This is the word that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam said to one of the companions, which was the second Khalif, when a man came and abused the Prophet. He was an Arabi, he came, because Rasulullah had a habit, if you called him by his name, if you said to him, Ya Muhammad, do you know how he would respond? He would respond by saying, Ya Muhammad. And if you said, Ya Ahmad, he would respond by saying, Ya Ahmad. But if you said, Ya Rasulullah, he would say, Labbayka wa sa'dayk. If you called him by his title, he would say to you, what is it, your request? What is it? I'm at your service. What do you need? I'm here for you. So this person called him by his name. He was very arrogant. He called him a liar. And they say the second Khalif pulled out his sword and wanted to fight him. Because obviously, as you know, regularly, his shaja'a, his courage comes when the other person's unarmed. In Uhud, he showed us his courage very well. So anyway, so he's drawn the sword and the Prophet says to him this. He says, be Halim. And then he says, Kad al-Halim. What? An yakuna nabiyya. The one that has forbearance or is clement. He's almost a prophet. Another thing is we don't have the capability of giving people wealth, for example. Not everyone's rich. But we have the capability of giving people good character. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam says, إِنَّكُمْ إِن لَمْ تَسَعُوا النَّاسَ بِأَمْوَالِكُمْ فَسَعُوهُمْ بِأَخْلَاقِكُمْ. That you're not able to give them your wealth. We don't have the vastness of wealth to give, but we have the vastness of good character and tolerance to give. And nas Everyone have to be someone that is tolerant. Even to the point where we remember the story of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, story here over and over again, where he's seated with his companions and a woman walks past, and these companions sitting down begin to look with the side of their eyes at the woman as she walks past. And the Imam says, she is a woman like your wife. If you desire a woman, then return to your wife. So one of the Khawarij walking past says, how intelligent is this kafir about Imam Ali? Hasha li Amir al-Mu'mineen. Says, how intelligent is this unbeliever? So the companions go to draw their swords, and the Imam says, Ruwaida, settle down, relax. He says to them, إِنَّهُ سَبٌ بِسَبْ أَوْ عَفْوٌ عَنْ them. That he swore, you can either swear back, مَنْ اعْتَدَى عَلَيْكُمْ فَاعْتَدُوا عَلَيْهِ بِمِثْلِ مَا اعْتَدَى عَلَيْكُمْ. He swore to me, I can swear back. Or عَفْوٌ عَنْ them, or I can pardon him. This is what being forbearant is. This is what a halim does. Someone that has halim. I don't need to tell. Someone abuses you, I do not need to respond in a similar way. But to acquire halim is fundamental. For everything I need to be forbearant. One of the most important things, that it is the fruit of knowledge. Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam says, عَلَيْكَ بِالْحِلْمِ فَإِنَّهُ ثَمَرَةُ الْعِلْمِ. That he says it is incumbent on you to have clemency, for it is the fruit of knowledge. So in other words, you know someone that has knowledge by how what? How bearing they are, how much they handle, how much they can do. A scholar must have clemency. You can't acquire knowledge without halim. You know that? You can't. Have a look. You go to anywhere, you see someone, you see the guy in the classroom that always interrupts the teacher. Or have you ever seen, you're given a lesson, someone says, I've heard this story. This guy's a waste. He's never going to get anywhere in life. No way. He might think he's something. He might have money, because a lot of people measure success with what? With money. Clive Palmer's got money. Donald Trump's got money. George Walker Bush has got money. Joe Biden's got money. Do you want me to give you a list? Keep going. You want to be part of these people? And the Lebanese politicians, I'll round them all for you. They all got money. You want to be one of these people? These are the types of people with money. Money is not success. A scholar needs halim, needs to be forbearing, to be patient, to acquire knowledge. And he needs halim to impart knowledge. You need it in both situations. This is the only way for me to do this. I remember once this guy was giving a speech, and they had it online, and he got up and he started shouting at everybody, do you know what the real Islam is? Do you know what the real Islam is? Nobody knows what the real Islam is. And he starts laughing to himself and chuckling. I said, what's this guy? A comic relief that they've put on the mumbar? This is what happens. All those TV clowns that you get, and you see their television shows, they'll talk to someone on the phone, and what do they say to them? Ayyuhal Bakri, al-Zandiq. They start calling them, they abuse them. They abuse another Muslim, they're abusing them. This mustadaf that doesn't know, he abuses him. You say to him, Anta jahil, and Allah says, wa'arid an al-jahilin, wa ana a'rid ank. You are an ignorant, this is what he says to another person, you're an ignoramus. You are hashikun. You are ignorant, and Allah says to what? To avoid or turn away from the ignorant, and this is what I'm doing. I'm turning away from the ignorant, and then he laughs to himself. This isn't knowledge. This isn't ilm. This isn't what Rasulullah and Ahl al-Bayt salawatullahi wa salamu alayhim ajma'in came with. When I am someone that has clemency, I always have the upper hand. Amir al-Mu'mineen says, Man haluma sad, which means they're on top. Any time that you're in a situation, have a look, two people argue, one person's abusive, the other one goes quiet. Who does everyone stand with? The one that's abusing? Everyone goes with the one that goes quiet. And in fact, that's who they'll stand. Look, in your community, think of a guy in your head that if anyone was abusing, you would break them. There's always a guy in your head, you know this guy would never abuse anyone, so if someone touched him, that would be the end of them. Because he has forbearance, everyone's on his side. But if he was someone, you know, those people, you've heard those. The one that when you talk to them, they begin abusing everyone in your family, the ones that gave birth to you, the ones that are related. They're the people no one wants to stand with. People abstain from and avoid. Now, if I am someone that forbears, this is the advantage in this world, that people go on my side. What is the advantage in the hereafter? Amir al-Mu'mineen salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi says, Al-Hilmu anda shiddat al-ghadab. For you to have clemency in the midst of what? Severe anger, rage. You know when you're angry, very angry, for you to hold yourself. He says, yu'min. You know what yu'min means? That you have, amen, you have security, protection. When? He says, yu'min ghadab al-jabbar. This is what will protect you from the anger of Allah on the Day of Judgment. So Hilm protects you in the dunya, and it protects you in the hereafter. If you don't even look at the clemency of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. وَإِنَّكَ لَعَلَى خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ. Allah Azza wa Jal says that you have the best morality. You have the best character. Indeed, certainly you have the best character. And this is how religion was spread. There is no doubt about this. Many times you'll hear people say religion was spread by what? By the sword. That's what they say. If that was the case, if religion was spread by the sword, you know, I also attribute this to a lot of the Salafi scholars. Because the Salafi scholars, when they talk about the Khulafa, what do they talk about? The good traits. They go, the futuhat. You know, yes, they did have a lot of futuhat, but they weren't into countries. But these people that they talk about, these Khulafa that they say that they conquered lands, what's the difference between them and Alexander the Great? What's the difference between them and Genghis Khan? What's the difference between them and Napoleon Bonaparte? What's the difference between them and Adolf Hitler? What's the difference? They had futuhat. Everyone, you can't go on this. This isn't the way that we judge. Rasulullah spread the religion with his akhlaq, with his moral character. The way he was bearing when people spoke to him. I gave a story last night, and the other sinner I spoke. This story, when I read this story was too great for me to even bear, of the mercy of Rasulullah and his character. That there was a man called Fudayla who had an intention to kill the Prophet. And Rasulullah was doing tawaf around the Kaaba. And you've been in the Hajj and the Izdiham, everyone's on top of each other. He went through the crowds and said, this is the opportune moment to kill the Prophet. No one will notice. So he moved through the crowds till he get as close as he can to remove a knife and to stab the Prophet. As he got as close as he could get, Rasulullah, he was right next to him. As he was moving close, the Prophet said, Anta Fudayla, are you Fudayla? And the man froze. And he said, Naam ya Rasulullah. He said, what is it that you're discussing with yourself? What are you thinking about? You're talking something, you know, when you're about to do something, you're always saying, should I do it? Should I do it? How am I going to do this? Before you're about to do something wrong, you're always talking to yourself. And he said, Ya Rasulullah, I'm in the midst of dhikrullah, I'm remembering Allah. So Rasulullah takes out his hand and he places it on the heart of Fudayla. And he says, oh Fudayla, astaghfirullah. And Fudayla says, I felt my whole body. When he touched me, I felt something overtake me completely. And I felt the graveness and the severity of what I was about to commit. This is how the Prophet would respond to even these types of people. This is what we're talking about when we talk about someone that bears, someone that overlooks, someone that tolerates. Even Allah Azza wa Jal says to him, says to his messenger, فَبِمَا رَحْمَةٍ, he says to him, فَبِمَا رَحْمَةٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ. So by the mercy of Allah, he says, لِنْتَ لَهُمْ. لِنْتَ لَهُمْ, you were soft, you were tender, you were lenient with them, with the people. And then God, Allah Azza wa Jal says, وَلَوْ, this is proof that the sword wasn't used. وَلَوْ كُنْتَ فَضًّا غَلِيظَ الْقَلْبِ لَانْفَضُّوا مِنْ حَوْلِكَ. That if he says here, لو كنت فظا, and we say فظ, if you were someone that was rude in your speech, he says غليظ القلب, you were harsh-hearted, you were hard-hearted, لانفضوا من حولك, they would have just left you. No one would follow the Prophet if he was like that, if he was rude, if he was obnoxious, if he was abusing people. They just leave him. They wouldn't follow him. They wouldn't associate themselves with him. Even Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib, salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi, when he went, the story with the slave girl, that the date seller wouldn't return the dates to her. She said to Amir al-Mu'mineen to assist her. The date seller, the tamar selling the date, didn't even know that was Ali ibn Abi Talib, because his picture's not on every wall like the leaders have today. Everyone knows who they are. So when he arrived to tell him to return the dates, to take the dates back and return the money, some of the narrations say he refused. Some say he was eating a date and he flicked the date into the face of the Imam. Some say he actually pushed the Imam or hit the Imam, struck the Imam. And the Imam remained silent. Long story short, the people said, do you know who this is? This is Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib. So the man apologized and said, this is something in the narration, you read it, you will not believe this. He was abusive. And then he says, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, he says, pardon me. He says, once you give her money back and take the dates, I have pardoned you. There's nothing else between us. And you're already forgiven. Everything you did, you're overlooked. This is what we're talking about. This is how forbearing Ahl al-Bayt alayhim as-salam. How would they not be when they represent who? The creator of the heavens and the earth. The one that delays punishments. How often do we commit sin? We are doing something so evil. We are doing something so wrong. You're waking up in the morning, you're having a jalsat ghibi with someone, and the wrath of God does not fall upon you. How often? You are doing something. Some of the boys were discussing earlier, some people that go to mixed gyms. How often are they looking at something and the wrath of God will fall upon them? But Allah Azza wa Jal delays His punishment. How often does this take place? How often, even the reappearance of our Imam Sahib al-Amr, the mercy of Allah in delaying his reappearance. Because when the Imam comes, you read Ziyarat al-Yasin, what does it say? It says, on this day when he comes, if you are not in belief, it doesn't benefit you anymore. It's a day where things are cleansed. It's a day of cleansing. It's a day for who follows, who doesn't. So Allah Azza wa Jal makes preparation for this. لا يرد غضبك except what? إلا حلمك. Allah Azza wa Jal لا يرد غضب الله إلا حلم الله. The only thing that keeps the wrath of God away from us is Allah's tolerance. Allah is forbearing, Allah's clemency. Okay? Now, why did I say I'm going to go back to the anger part? Because getting angry is natural. There is no one here, you know, we have a saying, I've never actually found the hadith, but I used to always hear it. I've heard it from a lot of scholars, they've said it, but I've never actually read it. It says, Man istaghdab, walam yaghdab, fahuwa himar. It's actual, I've heard this, I've never actually read it. It says, whoever is made angry and doesn't become angry, then he is hashaykhun like a donkey. Why? Because he's got no emotion. He has no feelings. It's naturally to become angry. Even I found a narration that's close to it. Imam al-Qadim salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi, he says, "Man lam yaghdab fil jafwa lam yashkur fil ni'mah." So when we say who doesn't get angered from rudeness, if someone's rude to you, you should be angry. He says if someone abuses you, you shouldn't feel, oh, that's awesome. He called me this and that. He says I'm a son of a so-and-so. That's wonderful. No, inside I should feel angry. He says whoever doesn't feel that way does not show gratitude to the blessing of God. Because you're a mu'min, you shouldn't accept someone to put you down. Within you shouldn't feel good. Okay? But the Halim represses it. He holds it back. He has the anger and he puts the lid on it. He says, all right, settle. Hold. Puts a leash on it. Make sure that the demon doesn't come out. That monster within doesn't come out. However, this is where we'll get to. Clemency has its place. It's not ever present. In other words, there is a time where clemency is not applicable. And I'll tell you, when you look at this, one episode that really shows this is what? The episode where Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam sleeps in what? In the bed of Rasulullah to allow the Laylat al-Mabit, to allow Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam to leave. One of the men that walks in to attack the Prophet and kill the Prophet is Amr ibn Hisham. Do you know who Amr ibn Hisham is? Who knows who that is? What's he known as? Abu Jahl. Abu Jahl. Do you know, that's amazing, no one knows what his name is. You know why? Because the prophets called him Abu Jahl, it stuck to him. The father of ignorance. In fact, he used to hate it. He detested anyone calling him Abu Jahl. And that's all he was ever remembered as, Abu Jahl. Did you know what the Arabs used to call him? The ones that would defiant against the Prophet? They would call him Abu al-Hakam. Because the Prophet called him Abu Jahl. In fact, believe it or not, the other team, the Salafis, you know what they say about him? They say he was the wisest man, most intellectual person amongst the Arabs. But the Prophet called him Abu Jahl. The Prophet couldn't see this, obviously, Something's wrong, but the Arabs could. Abu Jahl. Why? He was the bane of anything that's got to do with knowledge. He was what? He was what you call the antagonist when it came to everything that was righteous and knowledgeable. He was an ignoramus. He was the personification of Jahl, and he was killed in Badr. He was killed in the holiest of wars. This man, Abu Jahl, when he entered, because he was a fighter, he wasn't like the Abu Sufyans and the Muawiyas and the others. He was someone that would actually fight. His kufr would lead him to attack, to kill the Prophet and the Imams. So when he came in, he saw the Imam lying in the bed. Look at the words he used. He says, أَمَا تَرَوْنَ مُحَمَّدًا كَيْفَ أَبَاتَ هَذَا وَنَجَى بِنَفْسِهِ. He says, look what the Prophet has done. He left this one so he can escape. Like, in other words, look at this cowardly act, and he left this. And then he says, لِتَشْتَغِلُوا بِهِ وَيَنْجُ Muhammad. So you can be preoccupied with Imam and the Prophet can leave. لَا تَشْتَغِلُوا بِعَلِيٍّ الْمَخْدُوعَ. Do not deal with this man. Why? This man's been tricked. This person, in other words, he's calling the Imam a simpleton. Look, he's been led by the Prophet to do this. And he says, if it wasn't for this, he would not, if he wasn't Makhdur, he would not have remained in this. Then he says, if God protects the Prophet, then why did this is what a lot of the ignorant people say. If God protects him, why does he do this? If God it's another thing, we'll go back to the other team, the Salafis. When you go to the Hajj, they used to give us the fatawi, istifta'at. One of the fatawi they gave us, I still have this paper, inshallah, if anyone wants to see it, I'll take a photo and send it to you. This paper of fatwa, it says it's haram to wear a seatbelt because you prevent God from killing you. God can't take your life if you're wearing a seatbelt. Probably same thing if you're wearing a motorbike helmet. God knows what else God won't be able to get involved. You know, even if you're in a lofty tower, you can't take your life. So anyway, so Amir al-Mu'mineen answers, Ali, you're talking to me? He says, Ali تقول هذا يا أبا جهل, to me you are saying this? بل الله تعالى قد أعطاني من العقل. You said I'm the one that's deceived and tricked. Allah has given me aql. To what point? He says ما لو قسم على جميع حمقاء الدنيا ومجانينها. If my aql was to be given to all the inhabitants of this world. Who? The hamqa, the fools, and the majaneen, and the mad people. He says if it was distributed amongst them, he says la saru bihi uqala, that they would all become intellectuals. He says وَمِنَ الْقُوَّةِ, I have strength. He says مَا لَوْ قُسِمَ عَلَى جَمِيعِ الضُّعَفَاءِ, if it was spread upon all the weak people. He says in the dunya لَصَارُوا بِهِ أَقْوِيَاء, they would all become strong people. Not just normal people, strong. Then he says وَمِنَ الشِّجَاعَةِ, I have courage, to the point مَا لَوْ قُسِمَ عَلَى جَمِيعِ الجُّبَنَاءِ الدُّنْيا, if it was spread upon amongst all the cowards لَصَارُوا شُجْعَانًا, they would all become courageous. He says وَمِنَ الْحِلْمِ, this is what, all this I have, but then I have what you call forbearance. Can you imagine you have all this? You know, you accelerate faster than the fastest jet on land. But God's given me brakes to slow this down. And he tells him, look what he says to him. He says, وَمِنَ الْحِلْمِ مَا لَوْ قُسِمَ عَلَى جَمِيعِ السُّفَهَاءِ, if it was given to all the safis. You know, safih is someone that's extravagant. That's always, you know, those people that they transgress limits. They always exceed, the excessive, sorry, not excessive people. He says if it was spread upon all the excessive people, he says, لَصَارُوا بِهِ حُلَمَاء, they'd be of the clement ones. What did we say about the clement ones? As if they are almost prophets. That's how much Halam Amir al-Mu'mineen says. Then he says, وَلَوْلَا أَنَّ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم أمرني أن لا أحدث حدثا حتى ألقاه لكان لي ولكم شأن ولأقتلنكم قتله. He said, if I wasn't told by the Prophet not to do anything until I meet with him, he said, then there'd be something between us and I would kill you all. There wouldn't be any of you left. Something has stopped me. I have been commanded. There is a time where I have to act. I can't always repress. Take for example, sometimes you have to be angry. You get someone, one of the best examples is the youth, a cuckold. Someone that is happy for someone to be with their wife, or knows about it even and does nothing. This person, this cuckold, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam says the scent of paradise can be smelt for 1,000 years. This cuckold cannot even smell the scent of paradise. Then you have these guys, you know what they say? One guy caught his missus doing something like this. He goes, I'm going to be patient and I'm going to aghfir lah. لا يدين عندك. Where's your religion? Do you know who said this? Utbah ibn Abi Sufyan. He caught a man with his wife and then he said afawtu an, and then later he came and said I want to kill Ali ibn Abi Talib. Imam Hassan alayhi salam said slow down. The moment for you to show your masculinity and your courage was the day you walked in and there was another in your bed. You want to kill Ali ibn Abi Talib. You know, slow down before you hurt yourself. How fast? These are my words. How fast are you going? Slow down. That's how some people are. There's time for you to show. When is it? Allah Azza wa Jal says in the Quran about Rasulullah, Muhammad, Rasulullah. وَالَّذِينَ مَعَهُ أَشِدَّاءُ عَلَى الْكُفَّارِ رُحَمَاءُ بَيْنَهُمْ. Those with the Prophet are harsh when it comes to dealing with the unbelievers. Unbelievers are who? This is a problem. Why? Because a lot of people, when they see the word unbeliever, what is an unbeliever? They say unbeliever is anyone that's not a Muslim. That's not true. An unbeliever is someone that knows the truth and rejects the truth. And an unbeliever that you fight, as mentioned, is a what? وَقَاتِلُوا الَّذِينَ يُقَاتِلُونَكُمْ. Fight who? Those that fight you. If someone goes to war with me, that's who I go to war with. Not I say, all right, I have to fight everybody. No. When it comes to war, they are harsh. This is where you put your halam aside. It's time to show ghadab Allah, the wrath of God. And finally, Allah Azza wa Jal says to His Prophet, Ya ayyuhan nabi, jahid al-kuffara wal-munafiqeen waghlud alayhim. He says, O Prophet, fight the disbelievers, the unbelievers, and the hypocrites. Waghlud alayhim, be harsh upon them. In the war, be harsh upon them. You're not sitting there, oops, oh, sorry, I accidentally hit you with a sword. No. It's war. It's war. You know, sometimes people go, oh my God, they're cutting their heads off in a war. That's what they used to do in the old days, and that was normal. Just today, there's technology now. They just do a headshot from far away. That's it. It's a bit different. But it's just the way they used to kill in the old days and the way they kill today. You know, it's still war. You know, in war, you're not sitting there. It's not like you're playing netball. You're at war. And that's how war works. And even, you know, sometimes one of my nephews today, he wrote, what would Jesus do? You know what, Jesus, everyone used to look at that, you know, they give you the image of lambs frolicking with lions. And they're playing Ring-a-Ring-a-Rosie and everyone's enjoying themselves. Jesus, when he entered the temple, have you ever heard the saying den of thieves? Who's heard the word den of thieves? You know what a den of thieves is? A den of thieves is a place where criminals hang out. So a gang's club is called the den of thieves. Where did that term come from? From this. When Jesus entered the temple, and you got to read the verse, you know what it says? It says he came, he had tied a whole group of cords. So he had a whip made out of cords. So it was a proper whip, like a cat o' nine tails. You know, he's moved in, flipping tables with money changing on it, releasing all these doves. Because you know why? They've made the places of worship a place of economy and commerce, a place of what? Of tijara, of trade. So he flips the tables, he attacks the people. And he says, you have made the house of God into a den of thieves. And that's where it comes from. So when you need to repress and you need to hold back, in most situations you do. But then the occasional time when someone needs to open up a can, they do that too. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to hasten the reappearance of our Master Al-Hujjat ibn al-Hasan al-Mehdi and grant us the opportunity to serve him and to be martyred by his side. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين والأرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات والأرواح موتانا وموتاكم رحم الله من قرأ سورة المباركة الفاتحة مع الصلوات.